Good morning, everybody. It's a truly a humbling honor to have my friend Commissioner Victor Calise on FAISR Forward, an effort to talk about the now and how people in the now can assist us as we move forward. Victor, if you could tell us a little about yourself, what you do, and then.
Sure. I'm Victor Calise. I am the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities in New York City. And I have had the fortunate career of working both for Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor de Blasio. And in my role, I work to make New York City the most accessible city in the world. And we do that through education, healthcare, transportation, work, because people with disabilities aren't employed. 80% of people with disabilities from the working age of 18 to 64 are jobless. So we really need to be able to change that. And anything that the city has to offer, and it could be anything from cultural events to transportation to walking around our sidewalks and streets and our parks and playgrounds. So anything that touches, that you touch in New York City, we want to make sure it's accessible to people with physical disabilities, people with cognitive disabilities, people with visual disabilities, and people with hearing disabilities.
To me, one of the most powerful moments, and since I've known you, besides our trips to Israel together and some of the conferences we've been at, was seeing you come down Broadway in the Pride Parade for people with disabilities and having that whole festival. How did that come about?
Well, yeah, that was that is actually one of the great things that we were able to do. We were looking to honor the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that was just about almost 6 years ago. And we wanted to do something big, and we know that there were attempts and small types of parades that were put on in the past, and we thought, what a great way to honor it. And for the last 5 years, we've hosted a parade along with Disability Pride NYC, and they've put together, helped work with us to put together a parade, and it was the biggest parade, disability parade in the world.
I had the pleasure of meeting you through our mutual troublemaker, Alan Brown, and wanted to know how you met him, a little about your life, and how you got to be commissioner.
So Alan and I met 22 years ago when I was first injured in a bicycle accident. And Mrs. Brown, his mom, was one of the first people I met. From then, it was the Alan T. Brown Foundation to Cure Paralysis. And when I was first injured, all I cared about was walking again. And that was an interesting time for me, and just really trying to find out who I am and how I could move forward in life. Later down the road, we bonded through very similar likes, such as hockey and New York City as a whole, and how we can help people live better lives through their disabilities.
So let's touch upon a little about the hockey. Is there anything about hockey that is unique to Victor Calise that many people can't proudly say?
Yeah, the year I was injured, 1994, the New York Rangers won the Stanley Cup. So that's certainly certainly number one. Hopefully I'll see that again in my lifetime. And hockey since then has guided my life. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the 1998 Paralympic team that went to Nagano, Japan. And it was the first USA sled hockey team. And from there, every team has won a gold medal has won a medal except for my team in '98. But nonetheless, we were the first team out, and we set a standard that has led to sled hockey being recognized through the Paralympics in the United States, and more importantly, through USA Hockey, who now governs sled hockey.
Okay, so I want to go now to the current times. COVID-19, and how has your life changed, family life changed, and of course, being commissioner, how has that changed?
Everybody's life has changed. The way that we used to live has been disrupted. And right now we're trying to ensure that everything the city does has a disability lens. So we want to make sure that people have access to food, just like people with disabilities have access to food, just like anyone else. We want to make sure that people have effective communication, meaning that the mayor's press conferences have sign language interpreters and captioning. And we've been doing that since Sandy, and we continue to do that today. We want to make sure that when we're talking about opening up the city, that disabilities in mind. We want to make sure that when we're talking about care, that people with disabilities are part of that care. When we're talking about protective equipment, that people with disabilities have protective equipment for their healthcare workers that are coming into their homes or their personal care attendants, so they don't get infected or infect their healthcare workers. So there's lots of things that we're doing to make sure that people with disabilities are represented at every level of government. And it's a task every day, and we have to ensure that that happens, because that's what our job is, to make sure that we represent the city of New York and that we represent the people, the close to 1 million people with disabilities that are here.
And I know you're in touch with other cities, and obviously, I don't personally like the term, but we unfortunately have become ground zero again for a horrific event. How are you dealing with that?
Well, if New York does it, New York does it well, right? And that's an unfortunate tale right now as we live it. And we're working through it. Yeah, this is an unprecedented time. We have good leaders in the mayor, good leaders in the governor, who are giving fact-based information, who are driving us to stay home, to be aware, to drive down the numbers. As a matter of fact, I was just watching the mayor's press conference before I got on with you, and we're seeing the numbers go down. And that's all because New Yorkers understand, because we, the city, we, the state, are giving the information to our residents to stay home, to keep that social distances, to wear those masks, to be aware of the surroundings that you're in. And really, that has done some great things for us. We've seen the numbers go down. And the last thing the city wants and the state wants right now is to see those numbers climb back up. So we really have to stay the course, be leaders, and show everyone what New York is made of.
From knowing you, I know that you started 20-something years ago before your injury, and now obviously the amazing job you're doing as commissioner. As we move forward, and of course my mantra is one day at a time, maybe even one moment at a time, what would you tell people as we go forward and hopefully come out of this, let's call it a nightmare? What guiding light do you have? What suggestions do you have? What positive thoughts do you have that can assist others as they move forward past this?
So that's a really good question, because I think it's on everybody's mind. What is life going to look like? How are we ever going to be able to go to a concert? Are we ever go to a Broadway show? Are we ever going to be able to shake people's hands? And right now, we don't know that. What we do know is that we have a highly contagious flu-like symptoms, pandemic that's happening right now. And no one's going to feel safe until we come up with some type of vaccine. And we're not sure when that's going to happen. What we do know is what we're doing right now is to stay course and being able to keep that social distance, and wearing those masks and not shaking those hands. And that really disrupts it. Disrupts our daily lives. I know I'm feeling the effects, not being able to do that. And so is everyone. But we have to think about what's going to happen. What is our future going to look like? And if you think about what happened in 1918, right? They just, in the midst of World War I, shortly, the 2-year pandemic, and then right after that, good maybe 10 years or so, and then right into the Great Depression. So some people beat that pandemic and then had other challenges thereafter. And they survived, and our country survived, and our world survived, and people were able to move forward. So I just want, people to keep that in mind. Along with that, we have to think about what our future looks like, what public health looks like for people with disabilities. If we don't come out of this as a country looking at a public health initiative to be able to boost our country up, then we certainly do have problems. But when we do that and we talk about that, people with disabilities have to be on mind, and we're making sure that we're having those conversations with our health department, making sure that we're talking to our constituents and letting them know. What is transportation going to be look like in the future? What is work? And this is one of the most extraordinary things about what's happening right now. The world is telecommuting, and people with disabilities have been doing this forever. And people in people that were looking to give people jobs said, well, work at home is not possible. We knew it was, and now it is. And this is going to be the new normal. So how can we leverage this to ensure that people with disabilities have work through these means of you and I speaking right now? So that is really exciting. How do we look at our streets and sidewalks different? Maybe opening up those streets and sidewalks to more pedestrian paths, which will keep that social distance, but also allow people with disabilities to be able to roam the streets in a more in an unrestricted way, where some places now don't necessarily have that. These are opportunities, and I don't see it as something negative. I see it as something great. And our office is constantly thinking about that, constantly thinking about what's next. First, how do we open the city? B, how do we ensure that every opportunity we have now can address people with disabilities?
And what things would you suggest for you personally, for Jamie Lassner, for an individual who is struggling, who is going through trauma? This, for some of these people, certainly we survived 9/11, although that was an individual. This has never happened in our lifetime. But individuals who are afraid, who are scared, who may end up suffering PTSD, which can lead to other problems. What do you suggest to them is there a guiding light that Victor Calise has, or a mantra that Victor has that he can share with our crew?
I wouldn't say it's a guiding light or a mantra. I would look at it as, this is a mental health crisis that we're all going through. And how can you seek help? I mean, I think that's important. How are you able to connect with others that are feeling the same way that you are? We have a hotline. You can certainly call 311 here in New York City, be connected to mental health counselors. I would certainly recommend being able to do that. NYC Well is a great initiative through the mental health initiatives that we have here in New York City. I would certainly look within your cities, your states, and find out what mental health programs they have. Talk to people. But more importantly, I think, although we have a shelter in place, or a pause, or whatever you want to call it, it's important for people to get outside. They need some exercise. You need to be able to go outside, and protecting yourself when you're outside. We know if you keep that social distance, you keep that mask on, you're able to get some fresh air. I think that's really important. Being able to walk, being able to roll, whichever means you need to do to get outside. You don't have to be outside long. Go out for a half an hour. Go out for 10 minutes. And I think that's important. Get some type of physical exercise, because that certainly helps strengthen. And also seek that help, that counseling, because that's important. And connect with others. Connect with others via Zoom. Connect with others via phone calls, because that's really important. Keeping your mental health at this point in time and moving forward is one of the best things you can do to preserve yourself.